Very happy to introduce our next speakers. We've got Morgan Reed, who's the Executive Director of the Association for Competitive Technology. Thank you. And Lynette Matkey, the co-founder of Pickpocket Books. Yes. Lynette has also founded something really amazing, co-founded something called Moms with Apps. How many are familiar with Moms with Apps? All right. It is an amazing service that they've developed. It is really a platform to inform parents about apps, and it started as a small grassroots organization. They're now quite powerful and doing some really interesting things. So Lynette is a mover and shaker in the field. And with that, I'm going to turn it over to Morgan and Lynette. Take it. Thank you.
Thank you, Pete. And I want to thank Pete for making MoDevUX happen. I think we all know just exactly how important the magic of user interface is, and how that for us in mobile, user experience is really driving adoption. Because let's face it, we had mobile apps on the BlackBerry. We had Windows CE. I mean, there were mobile experiences there, and while those were good attempts, we really discovered the magic was about the user interface. We're in a not so magical area right now as an industry, and that is dealing with this perception problem about privacy. There isn't a day that doesn't go by where somebody doesn't say, privacy, I'm scared. Wall Street Journal, New York Times, Washington Post, you name it. It's scare of the week. If it's not Path, it's someone else. And so really, one of the problems that we're facing here is we've got this fear factor going on, but how the heck do I make privacy informative and yet in a user experience that people actually want? Because we all know the current privacy policy situation isn't pretty. Can I get a clicker? Of course they died. You know what? I am manually adroit. So the government has really pushed this button. Let's try that button. Good, perfect. There we go. The government really pushed this when they recently came out with a report called Mobile Apps with Kids. And yes, some government employee decided to name it Current Privacy Disclosures Are Dis-App Pointing. That's not a typo. That's your government at work, folks. So this report came out and said that they surveyed a few hundred apps, and basically out of those, none of them had privacy policies, and those that didn't actually follow their privacy policy. This raised a whole new level of outrage. This is combined with the White House, its new Consumer Bill of Rights on privacy, and of course the polls that have come out from Pew and others saying that everyone, 97% of the population, is concerned about their privacy. Now we know, just like sugary snacks, people say they don't eat them, but they sure buy a lot of them. So your apps are selling even though people are telling pollsters and the government that they're frightened about privacy. So this confusion is really a problem. It's stepped up its game and it's become far more important to everyone here in this room because the California AG has stepped in and has reached an agreement with all of the platforms. If you're on Apple, if you're on BlackBerry, if you're on Microsoft, if you're on Google, your platform store, Amazon too, your platform store is going to change its behavior in about 4 months. They are going to adopt some rules about how you can display your privacy policy and provide privacy information within the store itself. Now this isn't maybe, this isn't partially, this is an AG agreement. And companies care about that because if they do the wrong thing, they get sued. So the problem that we face is the FTC said, none of this information is out there. And we don't have good transparency policies. Well, most of you in this room kind of gave that response. And that's worked pretty well for us for a while, except unfortunately that's not going to work out in the long run with the California AG. Because here's the news. I'm getting on a plane next week to go fly and meet with the California AG and her staff. And she's asking me for information regarding developers who they should send nasty letters to. Now, I'm not really looking forward to that discussion, but here's the kicker. They're planning on sending 200 to 400 letters out to you and you and you if your privacy policy doesn't match your behavior. Now, you can probably fix it, but it's going to cost you a lawyer. You're going to have to hire a lawyer when you get a letter from the AG's office saying they will sue you if you don't fix it. And they actually can throw you in jail and get rid of your company and things like that. This is real. It's happening. In the next few months, there will be hundreds of these letters going out. So the whole whatever thing ain't going to work. So a lot of companies have gotten sued. Some of them have put out money. I'm going to move on and say we've developed a set of tools for you and some insights into companies. We've worked with Trustee, privacychoice.org, and a whole lot of other folks because we believe as an industry the one way to avoid those letters is we need to check ourselves before we wreck ourselves, to borrow from the famous song. And I think we need to get ahead of it because the government is coming after us. But we all know the problem. So we'll check ourselves. We'll get it together. We'll do great. We'll do the privacy policy thing. We'll meet the California AG's requirement. We'll deal with our platforms, and we'll put this up, and we're done. But you know what? We work with a group called Moms with Apps, and Lynette's here to talk about what we went through, what they went through dealing with this, because this doesn't get it done with parents. And frankly, this isn't going to get it done with your customers. Because I'm here to tell you that, as I've said before, I can tell you right now where you can make some money in the mobile apps thing and not at 99 cents. It's at enterprise and health. That's where the money is. People in healthcare don't buy 99-cent app, they buy $99 apps. People in the healthcare business have thousands of hospitals. They buy 10,000 iPads at a pop and they populate it with your $100 app. So there's money there, but guess what? They also care about all this privacy stuff. Same with Ernst & Young, all the consulting companies, same thing. So with Moms with Apps, since they're on the pointy edge of the stick, so to speak, because it involves kids, and we all know, you got to do it for the kids. They've had the experience of trying to design a decent user interface to take this into something that parents can actually adopt and read. And so to do that, I'm going to have a conversation with Lynette, right? We're going to do it as a conversation, to talk a little bit about their experience and talk about the user experience side of providing privacy information in a useful format. And with that, I'll sit down and have Lynette. Lynette, tell us about Pickpocket Books and Moms with Apps.
Well, let me actually start off with Moms with Apps. I saw some people raise their hands that they're familiar with that. But it was something that was started with actually a couple of moms who met online over Twitter. Lorraine Ackerman is really one of the great proponents behind this, and she runs the blog on our website, which has just a ton of information on everything from developers sharing best practices, talking about developer stories, sort of making this whole thing like, who are these people who are developing these apps? Everybody in Moms with Apps, this loose, collaborative grassroots group, we've actually got about 1,000 members, not just in the US, but also globally. So we're sharing best practices and also providing information as parents and as developers about our thoughts on the healthy intersections of kids and technology. And
I want to pitch one thing in here, again, because I like money and I like talking to developers about how to make money. One thing to remember, the educational application market, it seems small now, but Lynette and I have talked about this. Several companies are looking at China. Because one thing is true in China and India, they spend money on education for their kids. And there are 800 million people who are subscribers to just one of the largest Chinese telco companies. The second one has 200 million. Any guesses how many millions of subscribers we have in the whole United States? Roughly 200 million. So the educational app marketplace, when you start looking abroad, it's real money. There can be money made, but it's going to take some work. So it's not just, oh, shucks, isn't it cool? They're doing some little stuff for kids. There's real businesses here.
It is, and it's also a really cool and fun and exciting area to be in because we can be pretty agile as independent developers, and we can get something up and on the iTunes App Store. And so I myself am a developer with my company Pickpocket Books. We publish children's picture books to iOS devices, and we've actually got about 150 titles up there. And if you switch to the next.
Okay.
Oh, there we go. And so, really our goal is to bring, my idea with Pickpocket Books is that where screen time is concerned, we really want to provide some healthy options for parents and for kids. And so it's actually, you know, a lot of our books have this magical storybook content feel to them, fairy tales. But as Morgan was saying, not all of it is all just happy ending fairy tale. But we want to go on and talk about some of the grim part of the fairy tale in the form of the regulations that are coming straight at us down the pike from the government, and what Moms with Apps' approach has been to really pretty rapidly go into addressing this, and how can we provide some suggestions to people who are concerned about the privacy disclosures in mobile apps.
So let's take a look at what you guys did, your first effort. And to be clear, the first screenshot I'm going to show you is a screenshot of the first set of icons and text that was developed by Moms with Apps. The designer, Tor Hansen, did the icons in a day, in a weekend. So we're going to talk through the progression. But this was months of work and negotiations and listening to the government. So here's the first one.
Yeah, so when we're talking about privacy and disclosures, some of the main categories, and even still, these have been, they're actually not hard and fast yet, but these are the main things that we're talking about. One is, does it have privacy policy? Does the developer post a privacy policy on their website or in the app description on iTunes? Does it have ads? Does it have in-app purchases? Are there social media links, and are there web links? So those are the kind of the main things that the spotlight is on us for. And I say us, but I actually am talking to anybody who has a mobile app, because Morgan has made it pretty clear, in conversations that we've had with Moms with Apps, that this is not just about kids, but privacy policy is about everybody, and it's something that you're going to need to be aware of.
The California AG didn't say kids apps. She said all apps, not just kids apps. And I think it's really important, one of the things to note, how many of you guys are doing games? All right, you should be aware that even if you don't think your game is a kid's game, it might be. Under the new rules that are coming out, if your game has cartoon characters in it and could be considered a kid's game or directed at children, you may be governed under COPPA. In fact, I had a direct conversation with the FTC about this, asking the obvious question: is Angry Birds directed at kids? As Lynette pointed out, it has plush toys, for goodness sake.
Sounds like kids to me.
Yeah. And as far as the government's concerned, no, that's exactly right.
Do you have your own plush toys?
Yeah, do we have plush toys? I mean, the problem we face is the government may consider the next Angry Birds a kid's game. And so that means all of these rules that we're talking about, they apply even to those kinds of levels. So this was the first icon. And one of the things to understand about this is you have two opportunities to inform your user, right? You've got them in the store. They're looking at your app. They've searched for your app. They've got there in the store. They have the purchase button under their finger. You sure as hell don't want to waste a lot of time inundating them with privacy information before they get to the juicy part about why your app is so freaking cool. I mean, isn't that what you want to be saying?
And yet we're being told we need to do this.
That's exactly right.
Before purchase, before download, even if it's a free app, doesn't matter. You need to know what information does this app collect, or are there in-app purchases as an option. So one of the things that this banner, that you see on the screen, and
should I go forward too?
Yeah.
There it is on the.
Okay. Well, so this is an example this is actually Tor's website. Tor's from Norway, and he has some great math apps and so on. But this banner is meant. This is shown as a sample on the website, but the banner is actually meant to be incorporated on a screenshot. We have options for portrait and landscape mode, so that it would not actually appear in the app once you've bought it, but in the 5 screenshots that you're allowed on iTunes, that this would be on one of the screenshots, so that potential customers could be informed before they click the buy button or the install button.
And so our goal with this, and working with Moms with Apps, is, and you all here are user experience experts, our goal is to get past this and get to the cool stuff. But get past it in a way that meets government and parent approval so that people feel comfortable with what they know, because we don't want to lie to our customers, we want to be transparent. So we look at that, and then
So yeah, this is what I want to pause on this page. So, okay, so this is, we're going to show some examples where this banner that Tor developed over, under a very short timeline, we put it up for discussion within the Moms with Apps community, the developer community. This is actually specifically. And because the point is that we're looking for something that would be an industry standard that could be easily recognizable, that at a glance that people could tell what these icons mean. Now, if that's going to go on, I mean, I don't know about any other developers, but I'm pretty protective of my screenshot space on iTunes, so I don't want to slap up some big old ugly banner that's going to, make my screenshot look like crap. So, there have been, in these different iterations now that we've been through, both with organizations like ACT and with Privacy Choice and things like that, to make these icons more clear, but also from the developer point of view to say, okay, how do we, for instance, make it all one color or one palette so that it's not going to clash with some of these other things as well. And so we've had a pretty active discussion on the Moms with Apps developer exchange, and here you can see Lorraine, who's my fellow co-founder, has posted one of the iterations here, and you can see it has some changes from the other ones, the previous one, and she's asking for thoughts and for feedback.
I wish I had a laser pointer here, but from a UI perspective, and we're always open to more input, you'll notice one of the problems with this is, you look at the early screen we have here, those green striped through, no data collection, it implies something necessarily positive about not doing these things, and the red implies, as we all know, something necessarily negative. But sharing isn't necessarily a negative, is it? If you build an app with the purpose of allowing kids or parents or other people to share, socially interact, social media, why should that have a big red slash through it if you don't do it? Or why should you have no written across it as though sharing was a bad thing? So one of the real experiences that Lynette and Lorraine went through was, how do we get away from that metaphor, that icon metaphor, and to something that has some positives? So that's part of what that went here. And can you see the screen?
Yeah, I can see it.
And I'll go to the next one. Oh,
that's just
you want to talk about the definitions real quick?
Well, yeah, we can talk about the definitions. Maybe go back to the graphics, because we can test if this works out with you guys as a test case. The part on the privacy policy, do you have a privacy policy? I mean, I hope that's pretty straightforward. Whether it has ads or not. Where it gets a little bit more gray is the question about social media, or especially about external links, because, for instance, if my app has not an in-app purchase, but say just another link to the iTunes App Store to cross-marketing or marketing my own apps, other versions or books in the series or whatever, is that an external link?
Right. No, that's a great question. How many of you are using in-app purchase now or looking at it as an option? No hands? 1, 2 hands. That's interesting, because I don't know if you've noticed, it's the #1 moneymaker. Now, granted, that has a lot to do with games, but in-app purchasing is now overtaken all other forms of making money on the iTunes Store.
The market is more targeted.
Right. The market's more targeted. So this external links thing becomes a real problem. Or in-app purchasing becomes a real problem. But external links in particular, if you don't even do in-app purchasing but send somebody back to an upgrade feature, is that an external link? Are you opening yourself up to legal liability if you do that? So these were the questions that we had to deal with, well, Lorraine and Lynette had to deal with in the definitions of it. And you'll notice that external links is defined as hyperlinks to the internet that open a mobile web browser from within the app. So these might look super simple, but they have to communicate a lot of thought. And as all you people know in the user experience interface, that's a pain. So you want to talk about the difference between those two? Or I think, yeah.
Yeah, so this is actually, the one with the no tabs on it is our latest iteration, but I would just stress that it is not something that is packaged and sealed and with a big done stamp on it. This has been, Lorraine has been in conversation with this organization, Privacy Choice, and it was their suggestion to have these tags because, of course, if this is something that's going to be used across a number of developers who have different features in their apps, you want to be able to very quickly, kind of click that yes or no, rather than have to, pull out parts of the text to, add in no ads or no social media.
And we had this discussion. We also think it's a better way. It's a better way if you're being positive, right? If you do ads, the no is missing. It says ads. It's in blue. It's non-threatening, although, as Lynette told me, color palette became a huge issue because every single one of you in this room uses a different color palette for your application. So you don't want something jarring next to your app. And even in the App Store, you don't want it on a screenshot that's jarring with the rest of your color palette. So the goal was to find colors that were relatively neutral. Is that right?
Well, I mean, we're doing the blue right now. I mean, we want to stick away from red or green. We had some versions that were black and white, but that doesn't really look so great either. So I guess I would just stress that it's a work in progress, and that we're trying to really figure out what this all means, and we'll also see where that goes as far as what's going to actually maybe even be required, because
the laws are changing.
Yeah.
So as you can see from a UI perspective, even in privacy, this is where we started, down at the bottom. Pretty complex, a lot of information, confusing, the quick tip thing, all that stuff. The new version on top we think is a whole lot tighter, a lot cleaner, a lot less biased, and I think represents the kind of positive change we have to head for within this space. Because unfortunately, we can't go back to whatever about privacy, but we want to get our customers to the business of buying our app or using our utility and get over this question about what are you doing on the privacy side.
Can I ask a question?
Yeah, actually, do we want to jump to questions, or let me let Lynette finish up real quick and see if there's.
Yeah, I mean, as far as next steps, it's just really, as I've said, it's still a work in progress, and we're not sure what's going to actually be mandated, or is there going to be a standard or not. So it may be a question of adding, does this app collect location? And that's a whole nother icon to design on that. As far as the app, the icon being for targeted kids apps, I think I just foresee more conversations with ACT and to determine whether that's actually even the case or not.
Right.
I mean.
And she raises a good point. The law looks like it's trying to change. The Europeans are trying to move it to 18. The American government is trying to move it to 15. So if you have an application that's directed at anyone 18 and under, you're going to be hit with a whole new series of regs. Time guide. Do we have any time for questions? Are we dead on Pete?
We're right there.
Okay. So can I do one question or two? Okay. Let's do a couple of quick questions and then we'll call it. Norman?
Are you trying to get support for the implementation you have now? Are you trying to get suggestions from people in this community now?
Norman, great question. Lynette, through Moms with Apps and ACT, the mobile app, your trade association, I work for you guys. We are absolutely looking for design experts, user interface expertise. Right now it's a community effort, but the goal is to get something that's simple and easy enough to use, as she said, that can be standardized across this industry, so we can move out of this debate and stick with what we want to do, which is making cool apps, not making privacy apps. That's not what we're here for, at least most of us. Another question? Checkered shirt guy.
Yeah. What are your thoughts on pending legislation like CISPA that could effectively allow like the CIA or NSA to circumvent any kind of privacy policy and access your non-public data from, say, Facebook or email?
Yeah, unfortunately, I think at this point in time you have to deal with the fact that the National Security Agency tends to get what it wants. So I'm trying to deal with the practical of how do I keep you guys from having to face lawyers, and the positive, which is how do I build an ecosystem? How do we build an ecosystem that allows you to sell to customers? His CISPA point is accurate. We have a lot of questions about what that will mean, but I promise you, everyone in this room, maybe there are a few holdouts, a few power guys, but almost every single one of you, when you get a letter from the NSA, you're going to hand over whatever they ask for. You might call the ACLU, but you're going to do that in conjunction with handing all your data over. So you're right. It's a huge issue. We're on the Hill talking about it. But for this room, I think we got to focus on the business. How do you make money? How do you stay out of jail? How do you get your customers happy and feel like they're good on the transparency side? Do I have time for one more? Or am I done? Done. Pete's giving me the wave off.